World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Good afternoon. Tony Rogers here, your host for Urbanology, the Art of War. Hope all is well with everyone. This is, wow, the almost the end of Black History Month, even though there are many who say that all history is Black history if it becomes our story, not his story, because from the beginning of time, people of color have made been a major influence in what's happening throughout the world. Matter of fact, we are now moving into a time where the conversation is being really looked upon in a different type of a manner. And what I mean by that is that reparations based on some of the things that especially African and Caribbean Americans or Africans who were born in America or the Caribbean have gone through. And life is always interesting. All things happen for a reason. I was meeting with a new friend, Rodney Kendricks, who's a wonderful musician, and at some point I'll get him on the show to talk about some of the things that he's doing and working on. But we were at the Renaissance Hotel in Harlem, and I had my phone on the table, and I had been trying to reach my good friend James Smalls for some time, and I saw his name come up on my phone, and Rodney said, "Wow, I see a lot of his videos, and it would be great to connect with him." And I said, "Okay, well." I asked James to say hello, and they said hello. And then Rodney indicated that he had a friend who is putting together uh, uh, entity, a film actually on reparations, and there are different parts to it. I think two are already done, and I mentioned that to James, who indicated that he was working on an international conference dealing with the diaspora and reparations. So it seemed like it was a good fit for our third installment on Black History Month to have a conversation with Mr. James Smalls, Professor James Smalls, and Director Rodney. I mean, I'm sorry, sometimes I get so excited, but Kenise Berry, how are you brothers doing?
You're doing well. I'm doing well.
Hey, everybody. I'm doing well.
And it's good to meet Brother Barry.
I've got to just say this off the bat. I've heard about Brother Smalls for quite some time. It's funny that now we meet, but it's not funny at all because Spirit knows what it's knows what it's doing. So all things in spiritual time. So it's an honor to be on the same screen and in the same space with you, brother.
It's an honor to be with the technocrats. You know, this medium that we're now getting a bigger piece of to talk to one another and to spread our message is one of the most powerful medium men has created in modern times. Information gender. Mm-hmm. And so for the brothers like you and sisters who are into this technology, you're the Malcolm X, Martin Luther King of this time. You know, they were messengers. They were sharing information on the platforms they had. You've created a whole new technocratic platform. So I thank you. I'm honored with you.
Well, one of the things that I believe that's important now is that it does not have to be one person, because as you know, we have had a history of the person who's out there getting taken out or compromised in many ways. We now have an opportunity to have a number of different people saying the same thing, talking about the same thing, and many people hearing that they're not alone in what they're thinking about. Mm-hmm. And that's something that they took television and changed that, because that was when people saw that there was riots all over the country. They saw that they weren't alone. You know, now you don't hear too much about that. But the bottom line is that sometimes using this vehicle to communicate, it has always been used to keep us dumb. Mm-hmm. But now, for a while anyway, we have an opportunity to use it. We have to use it while we can, because you never know, you know, based on what we're talking about. Absolutely. But Chan,
yes,
you have had a wonderful career in bringing certain types of topics to the mindset of all people, you know, but in particularly Black people, people of color. And what gave you the mindset of developing this particular film, documentary on reparations?
You know, it all starts back in New Jersey and New York, where my birthplace, my stomping grounds, where I was downloaded into from people like yourselves during the 60s, the 50s, 60s, and the 70s. And now it's come up to this place where I now no longer live there. I live in Los Angeles. But Dr. Cheryl Grills at LMU, University here, is a good friend of mine. And she's been in some of my documentaries as Dark Girls 1. She was in Dark Girls 2 that I had done for the Oprah Winfrey Network as a director-producer. And so we stayed in contact over the years. And this came up, and she came to me. She said, would you be interested in doing this, this mini-series on reparations based on the state of California? You know, that's in my wheelhouse. You know, it's all about that for me, all about my people. And if it's not about the healing of African American people and women, I don't want anything to do with it. So this is about the healing process. So it was easy for me to say yes to this 6-part, 12-part. That's going to be only probably 6-part, 5 parts for me.
Well, and as I said before, our ancestors work in interesting ways, and it was not a coincidence that James returned the call. We had been playing phone tag for a while, and Rodney was able to see that. James has been a friend for many years. He's been a person that has allowed for me to actually understand who I am. You know, when I met James, I was going to law school, and then I found myself doing some other things after a period of time. It's incredible that this brother has been able to get the type of attention and still be with us. I always try to protect him, but I didn't know James was famous until my son said, "Wow, you know James? Wow, wow." He said he knew you. I was watching one of his events, and he said he knew you. And I said, well, "Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I know him. I've been hanging with James for a long time. We argue, we talk, but I didn't know it was like that." And then as I started paying more attention, I started to realize, wow, you know, this brother, as we talk about the second Harlem Renaissance, will definitely have a role in it. So I thought that the ancestors wanted James and you, Jan, to get together. So I'm going to step out a little bit and let you guys talk now, okay? And tell us about your issue and some of the things. New York State now has um, the governor signed into law to have a committee to start talking about this. But James, talk about your focus on reparations and chat yours and how we might even have you guys get together in some of the future chapters of what you're talking about.
Right. Well, I go back to Queen Mother Moore. You know, I was an imam. I was the imam of the Muslim Mosque Inc. after Malcolm's assassination, and I was also Ella Collins, Malcolm's sister's chief bodyguard, and a member of OAU shortly after Malcolm's death, the year after Malcolm's death, really. And one of the people sitting on the board of OAU was Queen Mother Moore, and her big issue of the day was reparations. I mean, she was the leading voice in Black America at that time, coast to coast, on the issue of reparations. But of course, most of our people didn't want to hear it. Forget about this system. Most of our people didn't want to even discuss reparations. But she kept reparations alive. And then we sort of thrust the coming into being of the Republic of America and the organization called NCOBRA. And NCOBRA took the primary lead in the reparations movement, but you had big thrusts coming from the Republic of New Africa at the same time. And so those works really need to be studied and the history of the NCOBRA involvement. And then you would get up to the December 12th movement. We just lost the great leader, Viola Plummer, of that movement about a month ago. They had a heavy thrust in pushing in the 70s, 80s, and especially in the 90s, ending up in the courts, where I thought that case should have never been brought. It was too early. And they lost that case dealing with some insurance companies and others. You should never bring a case prematurely when you don't have the evidence, because the reparations issue is going to be handled in courts, both in this country and in the international arena, no matter how it goes at the end of the day. Except for you'll have some nice local initiatives like the California initiative, New York looking to study it. Well, study may take the next 20 years. And you have the DC initiative. But one of the ones I worked on that I thought was the most significant was coming out of Chicago, I guess, under Dorothy Tillman, who was then older woman in Chicago, one of the most powerful. She came out of the Harold Washington shop.
Southside.
And you know Doc. And
Yeah.
she came from under Dr. King, tutelage. And she was a part of Dr. King moving from a teenager. And I worked in that project with Dorothy. What we did was got the city of Chicago to pass an ordinance that said no corporations could do business with the city unless they declare where they got their parent monies. And we know that all of them got their parent money from slavery.
Right.
And not only did they have to declare where they got their parent money, they had to present evidential proof of that collaboration. So this was Chase Bank, Citibank, multiple other corporations. And I think moving that way, demanding evidence and putting the onus on Brown University and others to show me your records, open those files, show me how you use our people as collateral. And so when you realize you had a Citibank that had a parent bank called Canal Bank in New Orleans, and their primary collateral exchange for real estate was black bodies. That's the foundation of Citibank. So to gather that kind of evidence is an important part of the process, because it is going to be a legal battle at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how righteous we are, or that we're the only group that have suffered this type. No one has suffered the length of genocide, because slavery was genocide. You know, we talk about it like it's a work program. It wasn't a work program. We didn't have a union. This was genocide, and it lasted for centuries. And corporations that now run the world, both here and in Europe, was built off of that process, this genocidal process. And yet we're the only body of people that have been denied reparations. Almost every other body in the world that has had a crisis that would be the cause for reparations have received it, but not the African.
Dr. Smalls, can I just jump in here just for a moment?
Yes, sir.
I've been wanting to hear you speak for such a long time. So this is wonderful. But because of what we've been through as a people, and that I believe it's become a part of our DNA, this pain, this pained body. Through all the people who have been damaged by colonialism and such, going back to what you said, we're the only people that have not received reparations. And it's very clear of the damage and who we are and what we've become. To me, and this is a statement, but also a question for you, Dr. Small. To me, we're the only people on the planet that have gone through 5 or 6 different name changes, and those name changes were not given to us by other people. We've been colored, we've been Negro, we've been Black, we've been Afro-American, African-American, and we've been nigger. And with those names being changed every 50, 60, 70 years, there comes a new ideology with that, or a new sense of self. And we've been looking for self for such a long time that many of us have become very confused on who we are and what we are and what our purpose is. Am I right for thinking this way?
You're very right, but there's some nuances to be added to that. There was always a core that never lost their identity, especially in African America. And you see it in how they name their institutions. In the 1700s, you get not the Prince Hall Freemason, that comes later. You get the Free African Lodge. You didn't get the Black Methodist, or the Methodist Church happened to be in the Black community. You got the African Methodist Episcopal Church. You didn't get the Baptist Church in South Carolina. You got the African Baptist Church in Savannah, Georgia in the 1700s. In 1892, before Malcolm X was even thought about, you had the Afro-American League, T. Thomas Fortune. And so there've always been a core that never let go of that identity, even though we lived in a terrorist state that said who understood that true freedom is to be shackled to your identity. And so everything in their way was to destroy that linkage.
That's right.
So the masses did not have the opportunity that the small enclaves had to support one another.
Mhm.
So they succumbed to the labeling because it was the safest path to go.
Okay.
Even if they didn't want to be called colored, they knew it is better to accept that than the horror that came with resisting that. Because if you walked into the Black church I'll just take the period from the Civil War ending to now, you don't really see a colored church, a Negro church, or even an Afro-American church. You see an African church, but they couldn't call it that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to look at the facts that we maintain, even in the Boule, as much as many of my peers, and I did initially before I knew what the hell they were, criticized the Boule. The Boule is an essential element in African social construct all over the continent. And they have been more of a positive than a negative in our situation. It's just that when you don't know something, it's a mystery. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I agree that exactly what you said is true for most of our people, but there's always been a core that kept coming back and giving leadership to that masses that never gave up the foundational identity.
I like to think it's a spirit. I like to think that there is something, and we talk about DNA, but there's something that has always allowed for the Africans that were taken out of Africa and landed wherever in the diaspora. There's always some spirit that gets into some individual or some group that allows for a certain type of continuing thought pattern and feeling to deal. You mentioned the Masonic Lodge. I just did an interview, and Brother Gray said hello. He also said, you know, Brother James, and then our conversation
I'm proud to be
changed.
on 37, Prince Hall, John Lodge. I preach Prince Hall everywhere I go. Because I think it's one of those types of institution that fits exactly what Bubba is talking about, that had to change its label, but it never lost its identity. You see? And that happened to most of us, you know. But with each of those labels, the other piece I want to come to, with each of those labels, colored, Negro, nigger, Black, with each of those came an evolution in our social expansion. You know, we grew something more. With each of those labels, we added to ourselves overtly. Many of the things that we were scared to say, scared to do, as we changed those labels, because I lived to see going from Negro to Black, to Afro-American, to African-American, and then to African. I lived through all those phases, and each one was us grabbing more of ourselves from the past to build the self today. And now we're back to foundational Black Americans. And I understand that context because I begged for years that we should label ourselves formerly enslaved African Americans. But you don't give up your African identity to deal with your ethnic identity. And I think the discussions around what is an ethnic identity, what is a geopolitical identity, what is a racial identity, what is a cultural identity. We have all of those things. I meet a brother from Nigeria. He says, I'm Nigerian, but I'm Yoruba, but I'm from Benin State, and I'm also African. And there's no contradiction. But when I say that, people go like, there's some mixed up Black people all over there, right? But we are literally saying the same thing. I'm a Geechee boy from South Carolina, right? I'm a Gullah boy because half the family is down there from Georgia. I'm a Geechee Gullah man from the South, but I'm an African American, and I'm an African, and I'm an American. That's my geopolitical identity. I'm not giving that up either, because I've earned that one, and I have a right to it. And what we have to do is be able to define the evolution of identity as we begin to try to reclaim ourselves that someone spent centuries trying to take it away because they understood the power of identity. And it was Asa Hilliard that told us that the greatest level of freedom one could experience is when you're shackled to your identity.
Mhm.
You know, it took me a minute to catch what Asa talking about. Then I got it. He's absolutely right. And so even with the nation state, and then I'm gonna shut my mouth, constantly redefining us by labels, there was always that core that says, never let go of the African piece.
Mhm.
You know. So when we saw the different dance groups, we saw the different music trends, no one thinks of the jitterbug as being African, or the Lindy Hop as being African.
Mhm.
All right, jazz as being African. Forget about tap dancing, drum
Mhm.
rhythm, all that. So,
Or banjos.
listen. So it's each generation have to reclaim aspects of itself as it continues to redefine itself back to its at much. We can never. We don't even need all of our past. We only need the best of it. You know.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna shut up and listen.
No. It's
It's dialogue, brother. What's the question?
so with these young people becoming who they are
Mhm.
and not seeing color or lines of culture, ethnicity, or sexuality. And with the mixes and internal mixes of ethnicities and race with Black people, these kids seem to be moving further and further and further away from the dark continent in terms of historically, physically, spiritually, mentally. And after interviewing such young people, such beautiful, young, smart people across the country for the Reparations Project at these universities and colleges and high schools, brilliant people that I know for sure that our future is going to be okay. But Professor, how do we keep them connected to the source that we're connected to so they don't lose themselves historically, physically, and spiritually?
It's not up to us to do that.
Oh
That
no.
source, in and of itself, will connect as it has connected throughout time.
Mm.
We can be examples. We can give uh, ways, just like this show. Somebody may see this show, and it may be an accident, a coincidence, but it will happen. Just as this, how this show came was, you could say it was a coincidence. I was at a meeting, James's name came up, and uh, and we had this. Now
And I
that could
called
be a
it.
coincidence, but that could be that energy. That
Mhm.
could be that source that has always been with us and will
Mhm.
always be with us. My position is that, you know, as bad as it gets, that only is going to create something that will overcome that.
Well, that source that you talk about, it has always been there, but it has always needed stimulation. In the African context of divinity, there is no God up there, over there, under there. We are part, there's just one existence. They say in Ghana, Naninyami, Jinyami, nothing but God exists. What then are we? We are expression of aspects of that same one existence. Each expression has an obligation because it takes all the tiny little lights to make the big light. You see? And so if you're going to get a big light, you better have some tiny little lights. So, yo, God, what's up? I and you, we're the same thing. And all African culture teaches that. So a lot of this comes down to how do we find ways to show the link? You know, one of the big things that's been in North America is that we lost our culture, which never really happened. That's a myth. But
Mm.
if you believe it happened, it happened. So we just have to do what this program is doing, and we're going to erase some of the myth, right? Slavery in the United States only lasted 200 and something years, not 400 and something years. The terrorism and the genocide out of the context of chattel slavery lasted for 500 years. But chattel slavery as an institutional construct, we were the shortest enslaved population in the Western Hemisphere. The only one that I think beats us is Trinidad. All right. And so that means the damage that people like to project having happened did not happen the way they said it happened. But if you have a perception of it happening, then it happened. And I'll take the Black church as the biggest example. The only place we were allowed safe sanctuary was that building. All right. But that building allowed for everything to go on there. The bank went on there. The psychologist went on there. The healing went on. Everything African got packed into the church and cloaked in Christianity, but never stopped being African. But now, having to disguise it so well, we have to learn how to define it again, so we can tell our kids, you don't have to go look for something. It's right there beside you. It was always there. Pick up the cloth. You see, when we talk about Alvin Ailey, and they were saying, oh, he did such extraordinary thing. All Alvin did was to give Africa a chance to be expressed on Broadway. All right? And so Louis Armstrong, Louis simply gave African conversation using a musical instrument to have a chance with his talents, along with so many others that followed. So we have to show our kids, like, we're not as disconnected as you think. And that thing that you're doing that you may not think is Black or African may be more African than you think. So I use a term, history erases the mystery. Study your history, it'll uncover the mysteries. And you'll realize that we've been sitting in the middle. That's what has allowed, this is the spirit that Tony's talking about, that African sacred science spiritual construct has never left us. And that is how we've been able to survive all of this stuff. But we need to now identify it to ourselves. So, hey, Grandma, that's who you are. You weren't just an old lady that made nice biscuits and good macaroni and fried chicken. You were a lot more than that. You were the retention of the ancestors' principles of ethics and morals and conduct. In the way you told me how to carry myself, to purport myself with language and all of the other things, you kept that all through slavery and used another man's language and nuances to explain it to me. But because it was cloaked in this other person's robe, we think it's theirs when it's really ours in disguise. And that's where history comes in erasing the mystery.
And the reason why we think it's theirs is because in many cases they stole it. One of the things when we talk about Black history, what that does also, especially for me as a writer, is to do research. Because I want to talk about what was, erased, Hidden Colors, and you were on Hidden Colors, that whole thing with when Richard Pryor went in
into that tomb in Egypt.
Into the tomb.
Oh yeah, that was
and he started saying, "Hey, these brothers look like me. They got noses that look like my cousin." And the white boys started moving back, and boom. And that's what they call Hidden Colors, because But the idea is that has never left, and that's the James. You said it a lot more eloquently than I can, but the fact of the matter is that we have a spirit that comes out of Africa. I believe.
Well, no, you're absolutely right.
Has allowed for us to Maybe it's the melanin, you know how those electronic components that allow for our complexion to be in a certain way. I don't know. But what I do know is that you hit it right on the head. And the answer to the question, Jan, is that it's never going to stop. No matter how bad we see these kids out there, there's a lot of them who have been influenced by that same energy that will allow for them to take on a certain type of position within where they're coming from.
Yeah, but look at this, Tony. When we look on the television today, we see more Black women than we've ever seen in the history of the world in leadership roles in any nation. Right now, Black women are the highest achievers across the world, not just in the United States. Black women are the most, what do you call it, upward movement in the corporate structure. I mean primarily African American women. And this is because of the access. Now, African American men, we only a few percentage behind. But all of this happened because somebody said Black Power. And somebody said, we're taking over this campus. And somebody said, you're going to have open admissions. And somebody said, you're going to give people access to these universities and it will not be all white anymore. Somebody took an action, somebodies. But those somebodies that took the action that opened the University of North America, particularly to people of African descent, was reacting to the somebodies who whispered in our ears, the Dr. Kings, the Malcolm, the Garveys, that we should do that. So there have been stages of this spirit recreating itself and re-empowering itself, that even with Trump right now, when you look across the country, everybody who's got his foot to the fire is a Black woman. I goes, my God, they're burning it up.
So I want to plug in real quick with here. I often say by doing the documentary Dark Girls 1 and Dark Girls 2 was so powerful for me, Mr. Rogers and Dr. Smalls, because I thought I was alone as a dark-skinned man growing up in New Jersey and being teased. But it wasn't until I became a grown man to understand that this darkness was just as painful or even more painful for dark-skinned sisters. But one thing I got out of all of this over the years of just listening to women talk and talking about their pain and their successes and everything else, I came up with this. I said, we men have damn near destroyed the two things that give us life: the planet and women.
Agreed.
And until women are healed, we won't be healed as men. Going back to Professor Smalls, the reason why I'm thinking that we're seeing more women take power because it's that time for a rebirth of humanity. And man can't do that, but woman can. To me.
Great.
So I think we'll see a shift in the universe, in consciousness, in spirituality, politically also, that you'll see more women taking powerful places and some men stepping back to support these women in these places, because there's a different energy that needs to evolve for us to evolve to the next level of consciousness. And I think women may be leading that way. I'm just me.
No, I agree with you. The only caveat I would put there is that we don't recreate what we're destroying, the European consciousness. And moving through that evolution, which is a natural and a normal, we better make sure that we're taking the African cosmology and ecology explanatory with us and not the Europeans.
Facts.
That would be the key.
Those are facts.
In Africa, going back as far as you go, they say that the woman is the power and she gives authority to the male. And all of the cultures speak to that. And that's when you see that picture in Kemet with Isis sitting on the chair. look at her posture and just kind of blur it out. She is the throne.
Yeah, yes, she is.
She's
She's
not sitting on the throne.
yes.
She is the throne, and that's what. And the King of Heaven, Heru, is sitting on her lap,
Yeah.
as her being the throne.
Yeah.
There's a lot of messages in those glyphs, and teaching the philosophy.
Yes.
And so when we begin to understand that thoroughly, then we understand Tony's piece when he's talking about the spirit, because it's unbroken. It's like that. Let sister, I forgot her name, who wrote the book, "Let Circle Be Unbroken." But that spirit is unbroken. It's just taking its time getting around, you know. But it's still there.
But it's coming. It's
coming.
It's definitely coming. We are in the, because that's the way it is. Everything has cycles. Everything rotates in cycles. Everything. I mean, you know, I don't throw away a lot of my clothes because I know if I last long enough and don't get too fat or too skinny, they're gonna come back in style. You know?
Would you please talk to my wife about that, please? I need my T-shirts from 17 years old. I need them. They mean something to me. I can't throw away these Converses as I had since 1967.
I packed them in suitcases and put them in the closet so Carl don't mess.
Well, I'm going to go public with my excuse. I'm saying, you know, I have to stay in a certain type of shape in order to fit these things. So, you know, having me keep these things gives me motivation, because when they get too tight, I say, oh, well, I got to cut down on this and cut down on that. But the bottom line is that one of the things, James and Chan, that I think is a powerful message that has been conveyed is there is a spirit that has been here. And when I say here, I'm talking about the world since time began. And that spirit may be invisible in some cases, but we see it. And the harder it gets, the stronger it gets.
Yeah. Well, that spirit that you're talking about, Tony, is God. It's the only spirit.
Of course.
The problem is people's definition of God is so skewed that they're missing the point. There is an African text. It's called the pyramid text. And I like to recite it to people, the first chapter, the Genesis part, where God, who's called Amen at this juncture, which simply means that which is unknowable, that which is hidden, says, I created myself out of myself. I caused existence to exist so that existing might exist. And when I found myself existing, this is God, right? The feminine factor, Ma'at, was at my side. Truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, reciprocity, and so forth and so on. And then he says, I coughed up shu, meaning the air, and tefnut, the moisture. And he talks about creating cosmology. Then cosmology creating ecology, Geb, and so forth. And then ecology and cosmology creating the human being, you know, a set. It is a dissertation in quantum physics, you know? And so our ancestors been reaching at this a long time that we're talking about here today. And so it is only a singular spirit, and it will never allow, I've been telling Black folks for decades, we will never be allowed by the totality of existence to ever be free until we become what we were before we thought ourselves not to be free.
Ding.
Thank you, Baba.
Ding. Ding. Ding, 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 ding. Well, I totally agree with Dr. Smalls on that one. Totally agree with
and one of the things, what I would like to just to go back for a moment, because this has been a very powerful conversation and dialogue, even not something, and I understand now that what I think is there's a higher thought pattern that always takes place. So things, you know, you think that you're doing something, but you're being guided to do something bigger than what you might think. But nevertheless, I want, because we have a couple more minutes, I want Chan to talk about your films and how people might be able to see them, what the time frame is with them. And James, I would like for you to talk a little bit about the conference that you may be working on in the in the spring. So, Chan, can you just give some direction for people how they might be able to see all of your the Dog Girl 1, Dog Girl 2, and of course the series that you're working on now?
Well, I'll start from the beginning, from the recent, and work my way down. The reparations project, um, called 400 Years California. We're in the midst of completing the series, which is a 5-part or 6-part miniseries. I'm on episode number 3 right now. Episode number 1, number 2 are done, and what we're trying to do, what we're doing is we're going around having these special screenings. I just had one at the Newark Museum this past weekend, where I was born. So they did a little bit of a retrospect of my life, my career at the Newark Museum. So I was home doing that and showed episode 1, episode 2, and then I showed Dark Girls 2 on one particular night. So with the series, once I finish up probably all 4 or all 5, then we're going to try to find a distribution deal for that platform, for whether it's PBS or Hulu or Amazon or Netflix or whatever. That's what that. As for Dark Girls 1 and 2, Dark Girls 1 you probably can find on Hulu. Dark Girls 2 I'm actually going to release sometime at the end of the year on another platform. The other projects, the Sam Cooke project, Crossing Over for American Masters, you can find that maybe, but we had some complications after it aired for 2 or 3 years on American Masters. So now it's probably kind of hard to find. And as for the other projects like the Church House, Sexuality in the Black Church, and other projects, they're probably on YouTube someplace. And you can check my my Facebook page also.
And James, you're working on. Well, you're always working on. You're the busiest, guy.
It's on to stay alive, object in motion stays in motion. So I just try to stay busy and just do what the spirit, like you said, what spirit leads you to do. And I got a house full of grandkids who I had working with me this morning, 2 10-year-olds, trying to teach them how to work, and not how to play. So it's an initiative that's being spearheaded by the Southern Branch Jeremiah Shabazz Nation of Islam, led by Malik Zulu Shabazz, Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz. But there's an international committee, and it's called there's this term, the Afro. What's the word? It means all of the Black folks in Brazil and Central South America, the Caribbean, the United States,
Diaspora?
Afro descendants.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the term that the UN has accepted to as a platform way of looking at all of us. So it's an Afro descendant initiative. So there's people on the international committee from all of the states in the Caribbean, Central South America, and North America, Canada, and the United States. And so that's the first initiative I thought they did it at Atlanta U. The turnout, that was about 4 months ago, was very low, but on the social media aspect of it, a lot of people zoomed in. So we're going to do that again, trying to expand it, because when you think of the concept Pan-Africanism, some people trying to throw that away, but it simply means African people united. So you don't want to throw that away, you know what I'm saying? And so we just have to tell the young folks, oh, no, it doesn't mean what you think it means. And don't get confused by the guy with the organization down the street with the same name. We're talking about a concept of how we would work together economically, politically, and culturally to bring change to the future. And so this is the African Descendants organization that's really behind this initiative. It's being spearheaded, like I said, by Brother Jeremiah Shabazz and Dr. Malik Zulu Shabazz. But it involves all of Central South America all of the Caribbean, North America, US, and Canada in this initiative. And they're linking now with the brothers and sisters out of the UK, Germany, Italy, and the place where we've migrated from the continent during colonialism to those urban centers in Europe. And the movement on the continent, amazing that Africa as a continent, many of the states are crying. Kenya is calling for reparations. Tanzania is calling for reparations. The Mau Mau as an ethnic community is now suing Britain for dang near $1 trillion of reparations.
That's right.
Against them.
That's
so
right.
The movement is a worldwide African movement now. And we are trying, we don't have an exact date yet. The date is being formulated, but people can go to my page, ProfessorSmallAfricanWorld.com. That's my Facebook page. And all my information flows there every day. ProfessorSmallAfricanWorld.com. And it'll be, when it's ready to rock and roll, it's going to be there.
Well, I'm glad that I had the opportunity for you guys to meet.
And
again, I was just an instrument. This was something much greater than to me to have this connection. We'll make sure that you guys are connected to each other, and I'm sure that there's always a higher reason for all of this, and I'm sure that higher reason will appear, perhaps not right now, but I'm sure somewhere in the near future. So again, it's a pleasure meeting you, Chan. I want to thank again Rodney Kendricks for developing the connection, and James, my brother from another mother.
Building takeover on 125th Street. We took over the Y back in the day.
I mean, again, back when I was a Black Panther, and you were trying to allow for me to understand that Pan-Africanism, because we were dealing with revolutionary, so that was counter-revolutionary, talking about that type of stuff. But nevertheless, we grow, and you said it correctly. All of those 5 names were done in order to create something even greater. And that's the way I look at all of the trials and tribulations that we've gone through and will go through. Mm-hmm. In many cases, maybe it's almost like childbirth, it's painful, but it is part of a larger scheme of things. As you say, it's God's work. And sometimes people get confused when you say that, and sometimes it loses what it's supposed to be. But that is what it is. And whether you're Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, or nothing to your understanding, you're moving on a spiritual plane, whether you know it or not. If you know it, it helps you to weather the storm a little better. But if you don't know it, you could be flowing on that plane anyway. So, brothers, thank you so much for taking some time to be on the show. I think in the spirit of Black history, this is a good example of some of the knowledge that's important for us all to have. And I'm sure that somewhere someone is looking at this, or will look at it. It will be on YouTube, and people will be able to see it afterwards. Chad?
I just got to say, I like the way Spirit works, and I'm so humbled by this conversation with both of you, Professor Small and Brother Rogers. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and you got my head going, and I can't wait to get to both of you so we can talk more about the documentary and putting you both in the documentary. And
you got to come to Harlem, brother. So we can.
That's easy. That's easy because I got my brothers in Harlem.
Yes, sir.
Well, again, thank you. And I'd like to thank, again, Soul City, keep Soul City in mind when you start streaming some of your projects, so that we can build that foundation as relates to being able to have our story told the way it's supposed to be. So again, James, my regards to the family and everyone. Thank you, my brother, for giving us some time to talk. And again, Soul City, Matt McCoy and Jasmine and all of the group. And again, another shout out to Rodney Kendricks, who was part of that universal magic that takes place when we come together to make things happen. Take care, my brothers. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. God bless.
God bless.
And wow, that was a powerful conversation.
Wow.
We will have our last show, and I got to figure out the benchmark is so high. I don't know how my last show during Black History Month is. I don't know how that's gonna be a difficult way to deal with it. And then we go into Women's History Month. So, of course, I got to put it out there, Matt. I want to have Yana on my show one of those Tuesdays. And again, Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, The Art of War. And I'd like to thank you for watching. And again, you can catch this on the Harlem Tourism Board Facebook page at HDB Harlem. And please tell people to watch. Take care, my friends. Bye.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.